Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. That is Matthew 25, verse 35. I'm your host, Sandra Flach. Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, where it is my privilege to encourage and equip you for your parenting journey. As an adoptive mom myself, with over 26 years of lived experience, I know what this road is like. My husband and I have raised 5 children into adulthood through adoption and international adoption and kinship adoption. And we still have 2 young adults home, both diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. So we understand parenting kids from hard places, right? Kids who've experienced trauma, kids who have been prenatally exposed to substances. So very familiar with the ups and the downs, the hard, but also the joys that come along with raising children adopted or through foster care. So I hope that this podcast will become an invaluable resource for you as you are navigating your parenting journey. Before we get started with today's guest, I want to remind you to like and follow our new social media pages specifically for the adoption and foster care journey. On Facebook, we are at the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. And on Instagram, we are at AFC_journey. So be sure to go over there and like and follow those pages. And I look forward to connecting with you there. So now today to our guest, as we close out National Foster Care Awareness Month, we have with us leading international foster care expert, consultant, and TED Talk speaker, Dr. John DeGarmo. He is the director of the Foster Care Institute and founder and national development director of Never Too Late, a residential group for boys in foster care. John is author of several foster care books, including his newest, The Little Book of Foster Care Wisdom, 365 Days of Inspiration and Encouragement for Foster Care Families. And he's appeared on all the major TV news networks. John and his wife, Dr. Kelly DeGarmo, have 6 children, both biological and adoptive. They have fostered over 60 children through the years and are currently fostering 3, bringing their household to 9 kiddos. Please welcome Dr. John DeGarmo. Hey, John.
Hello there.
Welcome to the show. Thrilled to have you on. We have not met in person previously, and I have no idea why we haven't already crossed paths, but I'm so excited to have you on the show with us today.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, same here. And I always like to start at the beginning of the adoption journey. So I know you and your wife have 3 biological children, but would you kind of take us back to what led you to pursue becoming foster parents?
Sure. So, years and years and years ago, about 30 years ago, our first child died of a condition called anencephaly, or some pronounce it anencephaly. It's a condition where the brain or skull doesn't truly form, and my wife was in labor for 92 hours.
Oh my.
And as I write in several of my books, including the book Faith in Foster Care, I turned my back on a lot of things at that point. And then years later, my wife's from Australia. We moved back to America from Australia, and I started teaching in a rural high school setting. And I noticed a lot of kids coming through my classroom with issues of attendance, issues of behavior, issues of academics. And I also had a senior in my classroom who was pregnant with triplets, and I recognized neither her nor the boyfriend were in any position whatsoever to care for those kids. And at that same time, in this small rural county, Putnam County, Georgia, there was at that time in the late 1990s, the largest child sex trafficking ring in America at that time. And I had a lot of those kids in my classroom. So I went to my wife and said, I've got this senior pregnant with triplets. I got these victims of human trafficking in my classroom. There's so many kids who are missing school or being abused, neglected because of their environment. What can we do to help? So that led to becoming foster parents. That led to my doctorate in foster care. That led to 13 books, and that led to 60 plus kids who have come through my home, and I'm very driven every single day to make the system a better one for everybody.
Oh, I love that. That is such a tremendous, just coming in the way you did as being a school teacher, right? You're mandated reporter, so to speak, and seeing all that you saw and connecting all of the dots. Just incredible. Uh, wow. So you stepped into foster care, kids started coming into your home. And John, what surprised you the most? I mean, you got a big glimpse of it in your classroom, but when they started actually coming into your home, what surprised you the most about being a foster parent?
That I wasn't ready. My wife had a degree at that time. My wife had a degree in psychology. We had traveled the globe, her and I performing together. We had three healthy kids. I was a teacher. I went through the training. I thought I'm ready. I'm ready for this. And then 20 minutes, I read the book Fostering Love. 20 minutes into my first placement, I recognized, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this. I'm not prepared for this. I wasn't prepared for all the trauma, the attachment issues, the lack of trust issues. I thought foolishly that the kids would be happy to be in my home. But boy, was I mistaken. Um, so I think those are really the biggest surprises I have. And I hear that from foster parents all across not only the nation, but the globe, that their training really doesn't provide them um, for when that first child comes in their home, because what you learn in the classroom, so to speak, is a whole lot different than what you're learning in real life. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, or like my husband and I, we came in sort of, I feel like the Lord just snuck kids into our house through the back door, so to speak, through because our first experience was a kinship placement. We had three biological children. We weren't looking to adopt or to foster, but yet we had this little girl who was a relative, and she was 8 years old. And we of course she can come and live with us. But we were, so naive. We didn't know what we didn't know because we hadn't had any foster parent training classes. We hadn't read a single book. We didn't even know we needed to. We didn't
Right.
know any of it. So we just stepped into it and figured, well, we're going to parent her and raise her just like our biological children, patting ourselves on the back on how wonderful we would be because we're just going to treat her fair and square straight across the board. And, I'm sure that you can imagine that it didn't really work that way. There was we slogged through. It was really hard for many years. We did go on and adopt her, but it wasn't until after we adopted internationally and we recognized we really have no idea what we're doing and we need some help here. So
Right.
I find that, and the fact that most foster parent training classes, I don't think, because we did eventually years later decided let's just take those classes to see what we would learn. And while they were helpful, I had already gone through a lot of the Empowered to Connect stuff. I'm sure that Dr. Karen Purvis's great work with TBRI and all of that. We went through all of that, and that was life changing for our family. But in the foster parent classes, they were, I could appreciate what they were teaching because we came to it having nothing. But now, all these years later, knowing what we know, and we have our two youngest who are young adults, both with fetal alcohol syndrome, there is no training in the regular foster parent training that even touches FASD. So it's really families are ill-equipped still, I find. So,
Yeah, a lot of our webinars at the Foster Care Institute, which I'm the founder and director of late, we have been focusing on issues like fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And of course I write about it in several of my books as well. But you're right, it's not discussed very often, and I have it in my home as well.
yeah, yeah, it's incredible. So I'm grateful that you're providing the training that you're providing, and we're going to get to the Foster Care Institute, the Training Institute there, and I want to hear all about the work that you're doing there. But what about, so you've been fostering for how many years now? I know 60 kids.
We
How many?
started in 2002.
Okay, wow, that's incredible. And you adopted. Now, did you adopt the three kids that you adopted? Were they came through foster care as well?
Correct. We've adopted three, and we've also experienced four failed adoptions as well.
Oh, wow. So tell us about the three kids that you did adopt, like whatever you want to share with us about them coming and what the adjustment was like. How old were they when you started fostering them? How old are they now? Kind of bring us up to speed on that part of your journey.
Well, the first one we adopted, and we never set out to adopt. That wasn't our intention. That was never our goal. Um, but I should also preface by saying that in our house, there's no labels, there's no foster, there's no adoptive, there's no biological. They're all members of our family. So when given the opportunity, it was just, of course, natural. But the first one was 5 days old when she came to live with us. We were told she would never read or write. And she just graduated from high school a couple of days ago, and now she's going to be going on to Life University to become a chiropractor. So all
Oh,
things are possible with God,
yeah.
right? Um, the next two are biological sisters. One came to us when she was 18 months old. The other came to us when she was 27 hours old. Both suffer from a number of disorders, including fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, disinhibited social engagement disorder. Um, they're third generation foster care. Their parents and grandparents were also in the system. Their mother is prostituted out by age 9 by her birth father, 10 to 12 times a day, 7 days a week for at the minimum 10 years. Um, so yeah, that's their journey to us,
Yeah.
if you will. And they are now, one's in ninth grade and one is in sixth grade.
Incredible. And how obviously there had to be some adjustment there. We all know we go through that, but what have you found as having adopted them? They've been in your family, and I agree. I have 8 children, and they're all our kids, right? We don't differentiate either in our household. But over the years, how have you found that even coming together as a family, with all of the children? What has your home become like with the children, all of your children in your family?
Tremendous joy,
Yeah.
tremendous joy. Um, if you ask my biological children about their adopted children, I don't think they see that. They just don't see it. It's just family. It's
Yeah.
family. We're the DeGarmos. Um, and everybody has their own challenge in some way. Birth adoptive, we all face challenges in our lives at all times. I was just telling someone the other day, life, we're either going into a storm, we're in the storm itself, or we're coming out of the storm. We're always going to be in a storm. And the anchor is Jesus. So we don't have that anchor as Jesus, we're going to sink.
That's right.
And we try to teach that to our kids. But so the ones that we've adopted, though, they have their unique challenges, to be sure, but that's mainly because of the what was what was in their system when they were born.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
you
For
know.
sure. So yeah,
I think back to a time when my oldest one was adopted, um, when she was 4. I think she was 4, and I picked up a young man. We're gonna take him to church with us. And he got in the car, and my daughter said, "Teddy, he's brown like me." And I said, "Oh, well, yeah, I guess he is." And then I thought to myself, I wonder what color she thinks I am. So I said, "Well, what color am I?" She said, "Silly, Daddy, you know what color you are." I said, "Well, just tell me." She said, "You're orange." Oh, okay, well, there you go. So our
well,
kids don't see black and white. And we don't do that in our house. We're all the same color, just different shades of God's skin in our
yeah,
house.
I love
Just different shades of God's skin.
I love that. Love that description. And you're right. Jesus is the anchor because there we will encounter storms. What has been the hardest part for you over the years as you've fostered and adopted kids? What has been the hardest part of the journey?
The 4 failed adoptions without
Mm.
risk hesitation. Um, Heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. But in general, it's when a child leaves our home. When a child leaves our home, it's like losing a member of our family. No matter how wonderful the reunification might be, it's still going to be a time of grief and loss. And sometimes we might feel a sense of relief having the children leave our home, because there may be times where it was literally exhausting. I remember a time we had 7 in diapers in our house at the same time. We had 11 kids, including 7 in diapers. And that wore us out. So when 3 in diapers left our home, there was a sense of relief, but at the same time, there was also time of grief.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think 7 diapers at the same time it should be illegal in all 50 states, by the way.
I hear you. I don't, that's overwhelming. I can't even imagine 7 in diapers at the same time. That's a lot. Wow. So let's just go back to the fetal alcohol spectrum disorder for a moment, because I know part of our story is our youngest two. We pursued diagnosis because we suspected that, and they were 6 and 8 years old, biological brothers, when they got their diagnosis of fetal alcohol syndrome and ADHD. And the developmental pediatrician handed us a pamphlet on ADHD and pretty much said, have a nice day, right?
Right.
So, and this was many years ago. I go home and I search the internet. What do I need to know about this? And it was frightening, right? No hope. Just we had a future, just a terrible future, with their future looked like it was going to be pretty dark and hopeless. So at that point, I had found the Connected Child book, and we sort of dove into all of that because we found hope and we found those principles were working, and they did wonderfully until our boys became teenagers. And even though we had attachment and connection and all of that, it just was crazy, right? Things started, we had
Sure.
the dumpster fire, all of that. And then at that point, I began to dive in and try to just desperately searching for information. And finally I found some stuff. I went on and got professionally trained um, through Facets. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Facets neurobehavioral model, and now I am an advocate. I teach and I train and I speak on FASD, but it's hard because most parents don't even know that that's what they're dealing with. A lot of the times the kids are not diagnosed. So how did you learn about FASD? How did you come to understand the best ways to parent kiddos who have this invisible disability, essentially?
My wife, actually. My wife has a doctor of naturopathic medicines, doctor of nutrition, and did a lot of studies of just over the years. I think my wife started looking into things like that when we lost our first child 30 years ago to anencephaly, the condition of the brain. So she has always been curious and wanted to learn more about infant development. And then her doctorate in naturopathic medicines, I also think, led her down some avenues of learning there as well. So she was really the first person that brought this to my attention. So yeah, it was through her. Yeah.
Yeah. And what kind of what ways what have you guys done in your home to help support your kids who were prenatally exposed?
A lot of stability, a lot of structure, a lot of consistency, a lot of love, a lot of patience, a lot of time, a lot of understanding. But you really got to have that structure, stability, consistency, day in, day out, and that routine.
Mhm.
Because our children, when they don't have that routine or they're out of their routine, they can become overwhelmed. And also diet has a lot to do with it as
Yeah.
well. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
um, my wife loves Bobby Kennedy Jr. Because he recognizes so much of what my wife has been talking about for years in regards to autism and ADHD, and it's all foods and dyes and vaccines and all the stuff that we put in our body. So we adhere to a lot of, again, my wife is really focused on foods in our home. It's nothing's processed or all organic. A lot of it's homegrown as well at our house. So that goes a long ways. When our children should go off to someplace, wherever it might be, and they get off that diet, and like we can see a profound difference,
Oh, yeah.
tremendous difference, with the foods they eat, with the stuff that they drink, or when they become overly tired, overly exhausted, and then their emotions start to overwhelm them. They can't really process it. As you know, the brain just simply doesn't connect. And school too, kids with, well, as you know, they struggle with reading and math, things like
Mhm.
that too. So that stability, that structure, that consistency, that unconditional love, and that patience,
Mm.
those are the things we really focus upon, and diet as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Such important, very important parts of the puzzle for sure.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond, invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets neurobehavioral model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphansny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphansny.org/hope-community.
So I also wanted to ask you, of course, I want to focus in here on the Foster Care Institute, which you are the founder and director of. So tell us about the work that you do through the Institute, what programs, what resources are available for families.
Well, thanks for asking. So the Foster Care Institute, if you visit the website, you would think to yourself, this is just kind of a one-stop shop for all things foster care and adoption. And that's what I wanted to make it. I do a number of roles for the Institute, whether it's a consultant for agencies, whether it's a trainer for staff and foster parents, whether it's a library of over 80 hours of online training webinars, whether it's articles, podcasts, do a number of things. I travel the nation training both foster parents and staff. Right now, I was just telling an agency just the other day, and I must tell as a journalist at least 3 or 4 times a week, the real the real pandemic right now is not a virus at all. It's mental health. We are in a mental health crisis, and our children are greatly affected by this mental health crisis, particularly since the lockdowns of 2020. When we place these children in front of the computers all day long, there was no learning going on. But for the most vulnerable children, they were the predators were lurking, waiting for these children. So we had, rise of human trafficking, rise of addictions, rise of depression, rise of teenage suicide attempts. All these things have risen, and many foster parents and staff are not truly prepared or equipped to handle these new mental health issues. So that's what we're working on a lot right now as well. In addition, probably the most requested session I'm doing right now across the country is secondary traumatic stress or compassion fatigue for foster, adoptive, kinship parents and staff. And I love that term, compassion fatigue. Exhaustion from compassion, from caring, exhaustion from caring. And there are so many foster, adoptive, kinship parents and caseworkers who are just so worn out right now. And that has risen too since the lockdowns as well. So a lot of people are struggling. A lot of the kids are struggling, and those looking after them are struggling to help them. So we're equipping a lot of foster parents and staff. We're equipping them to better address these issues.
Yeah, it's so important because I know it was during the lockdown that one of my kiddos began. We ended up, when school could go back, even though we were still like late into 2020, and school could go back in his special education classroom, they could go back in person. He didn't make it a month in that environment. Our school district had such crazy modifications to the day, right? Because of what they were fearing. And we ended up, to avoid a mental health crisis, pulled him out and resumed homeschooling. We had homeschooled years before, and he's about to graduate this year from homeschool. He's kind of in a hybrid model of, he goes into school for about 2 hours, 3 days out of the week, and then the rest we do at home. But we had to kind of create this hybrid model because he just could not function in that environment anymore. So we could see where the negative impact it really has had on all kids. But like you said, especially the vulnerable population, it's just been terrible. And then, I feel like we're just about to see, entering the school systems now, children who, even more children who were prenatally exposed because drinking among women increased throughout COVID, and unplanned pregnancies increased throughout COVID. So I think that we're really those kids are just now hitting the school system, kindergarten. So it remains to be seen. And there's
And
such
they're
a,
already,
yeah,
and they're already so far behind verbally as well. Those
yeah.
kids who were 2 and 3 years of age during the lockdowns because they weren't learning. those pandemic learning loss is very, very real as well. But for those kids who, we learn to talk, many of us, by watching people's lips. And when you're covering them up with masks, it was just a disaster on so many fronts. I remember being on CNN in April of 2020, and they said, Dr. John, with all the schools closing, what is your greatest concern for kids in foster care when they're closed, they're not allowed to go to school? And I remember my response very vividly. I said, I am far more concerned about the mental health issues than I am of any virus. And I think we're seeing that now.
Yeah,
And
you're
again,
right.
so many foster parents are just not equipped to handle these issues coming into their home. So we're really focusing on a lot of those issues.
Yeah. So I love the training that you offer. So I wanted to get into, because I've been poking around your website for the past few days. So much on there. So you offer a vast array of online training and resources for foster parents. So what are some of the topics that you cover in the trainings?
Oh, goodness. Well, with 80 plus webinars, we try to cover every topic: marriage and foster parenting, working with birth parents, working with caseworkers, working your biological children and foster children in the same home, autism, ADHD, stress management, trauma informed care, uh, you name it, it's really there. Yeah. And we're
Yeah.
always adding to the library all the time.
Yeah. What are some of the most popular topics parents are desperate for?
Grief and loss,
Mhm.
burnout and stress, uh, when a child leaves a home, um, compassion fatigue, um, the dangers of online technology and social media. I
Big
think
one.
that's very prevalent. When we, again, go back to lockdowns, when we sent these kids home and told them to get on school, they weren't doing their schoolwork. They were online. And there's so many, we all know there's so many dangers of social media that so many parents aren't aware of, or grandparents aren't aware of. So
Yeah.
that's a very popular topic as well. Um, since the lockdowns, marriage and foster parenting has really um, risen in popularity, if you will, as well. And I often tell foster parents, if you've got to put your marriage first, because
Mhm.
when the children leave your home, you're still married, hopefully.
That's right.
And if you can't care for yourself and you can't care for your spouse, you can't care for the kids. You just can't do that.
Right.
So those are probably our most popular sessions.
Yeah. And excellent content. So for our listeners who haven't possibly been to your website before and they don't know about it, how can they access this great training that you offer?
Oh, thanks for asking. It's very simple. Just type in Dr. John DeGarmo Foster Care or the Foster Care Institute online, and it's going to come up. It should come up.
Yeah. Dr. John DeGarmo, fostercare.com.
.com. Yes, ma'am.
Of course, we will put a link in the show notes so that they can easily find the training because it's definitely so many vital topics that our listeners are going to want to access that information. So we can point them there. You have also authored multiple books. The newest one, at least from my understanding, is The Little Book of Foster Care Wisdom: 365 Days of Inspiration and Encouragement for Foster Care Families. Sounds like a devotional.
It isn't. It sounds like it, doesn't it? Now, I
Yeah.
do have two faith-based books, Faith in Foster Care and The Church in Foster Care. But the Little Book of Foster Care Wisdom is just a book that it's a fun one. I envision foster parents having it by their bedside table. They pick it up every morning, and there's a tip and words of inspiration or encouragement. It's not a devotional.
Wow.
I thought about that, but not just now. Actually, I've got a 13th book is coming out soon. I actually co-wrote it with a dear friend of mine named Jen Lilly. She's a celebrity actress on Hallmark movies, strong Christian lady, foster adoptive parent. It's been a dear friend for mine a long time. So we just finished that book. It's in the editing process right now. But yeah, that little book of foster care wisdom, that's just a fun little book where foster parents can get some much needed, not only encouragement every day for what I think is the hardest thing I've ever done, but also some wisdom every day too.
Yeah, I love that. So tell us about the new book coming out. What is the topic and when will it be released?
I think the title, of course, is still in the process, but I think the title might be Everything You Wanted to Ask About Foster Parenting, but We're Afraid to Ask.
Right.
So it covers everything from two different perspectives, from a doctorate male perspective and a celebrity actress female perspective. For somebody who's been doing this for a very, very long time and somebody who's kind of new to it. So it was a lot of fun to write. Again, two completely different perspectives. Jen's voice, my voice, all on the same topic, and we cover everything that you can imagine about foster parenting. And I believe it's scheduled to come out February 2026.
Oh, wow. Love that. We'll have to stay tuned for that. We'll let our listeners know when that's about to happen. I'm sure that we can stay tuned to your social media. I know that you and I follow you on social media. So let us know your social media handle. So if any listeners are wanting to follow you there, where can
Oh,
we find you?
thank you. Facebook is Dr. John DeGarmo Foster Care Institute, I think. Twitter is at Dr. John DeGarmo, LinkedIn, Dr. John DeGarmo, YouTube as well. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. We'll make sure again all that is in the show notes so that our
Thank
listeners
you.
can find you because you've got such great resources here. So we'll include links to all of that and to your website. Another thing I'm curious about is Never Too Late, the residential group for boys in foster care. What can you tell us about that?
We were asked to do our 12th child, and my wife, and I was actually speaking in Iowa. And my wife told the caseworker, I can't take 12 kids to school. Where am I going to put the 12th child? They said, well, just for a couple of days and put on the couch. And my wife's like, no, I can't do this by myself. I think I was in Iowa for 3 or 4 days, an event. So, and a lot of people encouraged up and said, you need to open up a residential home for boys. After a lot of prayer, we did, and it was thriving and so successful. And then the very strict, severe mandates of the lockdowns forced it to shut down, sadly. And
Wow.
what broke my heart the most was when the doors closed, those boys had no place to go.
Yeah.
But the state said, well, due to all the mandates of COVID, 6 feet apart, all this kind of stuff, they forced it to shut down, which it was a very sad day.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that because I clearly such a need. That's why
Oh,
you established that.
it was a tremendous joy.
Yeah.
It was just a joy. It was a blessing to be able to
Yeah.
help those boys.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. So I'm sorry to hear about that. So is there something, are you looking at revisiting that in the future or is that a closed door?
Uh, who knows what God has planned? I never planned on being a foster parent. I never planned on being an adoptive parent. I never planned on getting my doctorate in foster care. I had never planned on writing a book. So, God has an incredible sense of humor, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. He certainly accomplishes his purposes through us, in spite of us, right?
But you know what? I wake up every morning and my first thought is, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
Amen.
Um, and at the same time, foster parenting has been the hardest thing I've ever done. It's been the most rewarding thing I've ever done. Every child's made me a better person in some way, but it has been challenging
Yeah.
on so many levels.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. We live it every day, right? We've got children who've just experienced such tremendous adversity. Yet God places them in our homes. That is my dog. Can you hear my dog barking?
I cannot.
You cannot. Well, that's good to know. She going crazy because somebody just pulled into our driveway. So um hopefully I'm not sure if that will show up or not, but if our listeners are hearing barking, it's Liberty again. Um, sorry about that. So, all right. So on to the next thing here I wanted to ask you about because one of the things I love to do is offer um encouragement, especially I think this interview is going to come, is going to get dropped on uh, out there, posted out there in the internet world, probably late May, early June. And I always like to we get to that time of the year and I think of the dads because Father's Day is coming up and there's not, I think, a lot out there for dads. I do notice that you do have a webinar, one of your
Just for
online.
dads?
Yeah, just for dads. So would
Right.
you speak to that for us? Would you offer some words of encouragement for dads who are on this journey?
A long time ago, I recognized the responsibility that I have, and I embrace this responsibility that I have as a father and father figure for every child that comes into my home. I am an example of a couple things. What a father looks like and what a husband looks like. All those children that come to my home, I'm an example of how a father should treat a child. And at the same time, for the girls to come to my home, how I treat my wife, how I talk to my wife, how I treat her. They're always watching, they're always listening, how I treat others. Um, so I have a long time ago embraced that. I love being an example. Now, do I fail? Of course, because I'm human, but I strive every day to be a positive role model as a father and as a husband, um, for every child that I'm blessed to have in my home. So I think that for all fathers, and sadly, and I wrote an article about this years ago. Sadly, we have a shortage of fathers in America. We have a shortage of fathers in America. Um, I was just at an event and I was stunned by the number of single mothers in the room, and it grieves me. Um, it just grieves me. So I say to all fathers, what a wonderful blessing you have, an opportunity you have to be a role model to children, to raise them, to love them, to teach them, to guide them. My this past weekend, my three oldest kids, my oldest is 28, 26, 25. They came home from my 18-year-old daughter's graduation, and it's just so much fun having the older kids come back. And um, yeah, being a father is a blessing, but it's also at the same time a responsibility every single day. And kids today, for so many children, they are craving that father figure in the household.
Mhm.
And kids, particularly kids in foster care, they listen to everything we say, they watch everything that we do. So again, it's 24 hours a day as a role model, and we need to take that seriously. But again, it can be so wonderful as well. So wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for sharing a little word of encouragement there to the dads who are listening. The other thing that's going on about this time of year, you mentioned graduation. Some schools are already out, depending on where you are in the country. Where I am in the Northeast, it doesn't happen till June, but it's a time of transition, right? Kids are that structure from the school day and the school year comes to a close for the summer. So how can parents navigate this transition, right? Where there's lack of structure, the kids aren't going to school. How can we navigate that? Because it can be so hard for our kids and for parents.
Well, you still got to have a routine. It's just going to be a different routine. It's just going to be a different routine. Um, for one, to begin with, if a child is spending all day long on this, it's going
Mhm.
to be tremendously detrimental for everybody.
Yeah.
So we severely limit their screen time in the summertime, but they're involved in activities where they're learning how to cook, they're learning how to garden, they're going to summer camps, they're going to band practice, they're going on vacations, they're going on bike rides, they're going swimming. We have something uh, throughout the day for them. And again, there's that routine, and they
Mhm.
still have responsibilities as well, chores, feeding the animals, whatever it might be. But I think summer can be a time of tremendous learning, but in
Yeah.
a different way, and self-discovery. This is
Mhm.
the time where kids might learn, they might really embrace their hobbies, which could lead to possible careers for these
Mhm.
kids. In our house, kids learn to start cooking at age 10. They're doing their own laundry at 10 as well, but they're starting cooking, and um, they're given more responsibilities, and again, less screen time. Because if a kid's going to spend all day long at this, you're asking for trouble. So again, a different kind of routine. That stability's got to be in that place as well, and that structure, but adventure too. And as parents, we can be sharing in that adventure. My kids, we have adventures. I always tell parents, it's okay to let the kids get dirty. It's okay to let them stomp in that mud puddle, particularly for kids who have suffered tremendous trauma, because when they're outside playing, they might be healing. There might be some healing going. There might be some laughter. I'm a big fan of play therapy. I don't want the kids coming into my house with their dirty boots and stepping in the mud puddles. No, let them do it, because they might be getting out some aggressive or whatever it might be. And laughter can be, I remember the book Reader's Digest, Laughter is the Best Medicine. Remember that little art? Yes. So, so it's okay, but I tell parents, hey, get in there and go for bike rides and go swimming with the kids and feed chickens if you have chickens and have your kids learn how to plant plants and grow things from seeds and um, throw a baseball around and get dirty together. Just have fun.
Yeah. The outside nature stuff, right? Animals, dirt,
Absolutely.
growing things. It's just
Yes.
being out there is so nurturing and calming to their nervous systems, to our nervous systems. Such an important part of the healing. I've seen that with my own kiddos for sure. Um, you held up the cell phone, the smartphone a few different times, right? So I know you have a training, a workshop specifically on the internet and screens and social media and all that. So we could talk all day about so many different topics, I'm sure, but let's wrap up. I have one more question, but I also want to ask you about screens. What's your approach there? What do you tell parents and caregivers about technology?
Well, in my book, Keeping Foster Children Safe Online, we address so many of the dangers on there. To begin with, in our house, we don't even begin the discussion of getting a cell phone until you were at least ninth grade. And if you're ninth grade, doesn't mean you're going to get it. You've got to show that you are ready and responsible for it. The frontal cortex is not fully developed until someone's 25 years of age. Many people are arguing now it's 30 years of age because this has really dumbed us down. So there's no way a young third, fourth, fifth grader, or even younger, as I've seen kids with them younger than that, can navigate the many, many dangers. In addition, um, we have a rule where you can't friend anybody online actually unless you actually know them and your mom and dad know them as well.
Mhm.
Because we don't know who it might be. In our house, you can only spend a limited time each day on it. And then the phone or any device is charged in the kitchen
Mhm.
at a certain time at night. They don't go in the bedrooms. And my wife or I will look through the phone to see who is contacting our children, see who our children are contacting, to see what they might be playing or watching. And some might say, well, you're invading their privacy. And I say, rubbish. We're protecting our children.
That's right.
We're protecting our children because if I don't know who's contacting my children, that could pose a tremendous problem. Um, because, human trafficking is the number one global business, and a lot of it is through online technology and social media, particularly for the most vulnerable children. They just go
Right.
online looking for one thing, to be loved. And
Yeah.
that's where the predators lure them in with false hopes and false promises. So um, we need to protect our children from that um, on a daily basis, every single day. We need to be checking their phones to see, again, who's contacting our children that we don't know or they don't know, and vice versa.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you brought up the prefrontal cortex executive function part of the brain there, and especially when there's been prenatal exposure, right?
Yes.
That part is hugely affected. So not only are they not developmentally ready, like you said, the human brain isn't fully developed until at least 25. Factor in prenatal exposure, they're even younger than that. So to be able to navigate and make wise decisions and handle that responsibility online, they just don't have it. And I remember reading an article about the different symptoms of too much screen time, and those symptoms basically overlap with the primary symptoms of prenatal exposure to alcohol. So then if you have a child who has
Okay.
had prenatal exposure and you're giving them excessive amounts of screen time, you're exasperating or exacerbating all of the symptoms that you're already struggling with. So it's definitely, but it's hard. It's hard. I think it was during the pandemic when I discovered, because I'm not extremely tech savvy. I didn't realize back then that our smart TV is so smart that it has YouTube, right? So although we weren't allowing devices with YouTube, they found it on the TV and we didn't know they were watching inappropriate things on the TV through YouTube. So there's just so many ways that our kids are vulnerable and parents need to be on top of it, really.
Many parents use it as a babysitting device, though.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we keep our TV remotes locked away so that the only used when it's families around, adults are around, parents are around, because again, anything could be accessed, and it was a sobering lesson to learn. Like, we thought we had it handled with this, we had all these plans for the smartphones, and I missed the fact that the TV could do the same thing. So
I call it the most relevant issue facing foster care today, because
yeah,
you and I might live in an online world, but our children inhabit that world. And there's a very, very big difference. And again, so many foster parents, particularly those older ones, or kinship parents, grandparents,
yeah,
aren't familiar with the many, many dangers associated with this. Gone are the days of the Brady Bunch and Gilligan's Island. What they can access today and watch today is horrifying in some
yeah.
ways.
And they don't even have to be looking for it; it will find
Oh,
them.
to be sure.
Yeah,
To be sure.
yeah.
Yes.
So scary out there. Um, so John, we got to land the plane, I guess. But you and I feel like we could talk forever about all of these topics. But our listeners primarily adoptive and foster and kinship caregivers. So as we wrap up, would you share some encouraging words overall for our listeners who are on this foster and adoption journey?
Sure, sure. So many foster parents tell me as I travel the country and the globe that that they're not superheroes or angels, and I say that you are. You're doing
Mm,
something that so few are willing to do. It is not a job, it's a lifestyle. It's a
mm,
lifestyle that so few not only don't understand or appreciate, they just don't do. And you might think that, you know what, maybe I'm not making a difference. But I tell you that you are. Years from now, the child in your home might not remember your name. And years from now, the child might not remember your face. But years from now, they'll remember this, that for a time in their life, and maybe the only time in their life, somebody loved them.
mm.
I can't change the world, and you can't change the world, but for those children in your home, their world is changed by
Yeah.
that unconditional love you're giving them.
I love that. Love that. John, thank you so much for all that you do on behalf of the adoption and foster care community, vital resources that you're providing. So just thank you for all that you do, and thank you for being with us today.
Well, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, wow. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode today and my conversation with Dr. John DeGarmo. Be sure to check out the show notes so that you can get links to his website and his social media. You will want to check out the important resources that he offers. Just incredible amount of topics that are there on the website for training, and it's all online. So you can check that out. I hope that you will. And please be sure to check out our resources for your parenting journey. We have the Hope for the FASD Journey online support community. We just have such a blessed group of parents and caregivers who are parenting kiddos either with diagnosed FASD or suspected. It's really hard to get a diagnosis. So a lot of parents don't even have that formal diagnosis, but they just, we know what we know, right? And we just link arms and pray for one another and encourage each other and learn from one another. So I hope that you'll consider the online support community. We have the online and in-person FASD trainings and workshops that I lead. I've got some great travel coming up this year, especially in the fall. I'll be in Ohio and I'll be in Houston, and I believe I'm going to be down in Montgomery, Birmingham, Alabama area. So reach out if you have an organization or a group, or if you're having a retreat or a conference. Reach out because I do travel, and I'm also available for online workshops as well. If you want something specific for your group, I'm available. Just reach out through the links in the show notes for the show so that you can easily reach me. My email address is linked right in there. Feel free to reach out if you have a comment about the podcast, if there's something you want to know more about, or a topic you want us to tackle, or whatever it might be. Your feedback. I am so blessed when I hear from you and how this podcast has helped you. Drop me a line via email. It comes straight to me. I read every one of them myself, and I'm so grateful to hear from you. So feel free to do that. Check out our training. Check out where I'll be traveling, one-on-one parent coaching if you're not so much ready for a workshop or you want just something more personalized. I do that as well. So you would go to justicefororphansny.org to access all of the training. And again, it's all in the show notes. You can find links to everything there. As a mom of 2 young adults with fetal alcohol syndrome, I spent years trying to figure out what was going on, and we had connection and we became trauma informed, and we had all of that, and things were going pretty well until they weren't. And that's when I began to take a deeper dive into FASD, because gosh, guys, it's 1 in 20 school age children in the United States. That's just your average school age child. 1 in 20 has been prenatally exposed to alcohol in utero. Most are not diagnosed. And at the same time, children in adoptive and foster placements, kinship placements, a vast majority of them, an overwhelming number of them, have been prenatally exposed. And a lot of time they're not diagnosed, or they're misdiagnosed. If you have a kiddo with the whole alphabet soup of diagnoses, it is likely all of those diagnoses come under the umbrella of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And regardless of whether we know exactly where it came from, if our kids have a brain difference, if they have those big challenging behaviors and we're trying to figure it all out, what I teach with the FASD training that we do, it's all brain based. So no matter what's going on with your kiddo, even if it's not FASD and it is autism, or maybe there was drug use and you don't know about alcohol use, or maybe it was not to say just trauma, but maybe it was trauma and you don't know about any of the other stuff, right? Whatever it is, the neurobehavioral brain-based approach that I teach in the workshops, that I apply at home with my own kiddos, and that I teach you how to do, it works straight across the board for every one of those scenarios. So check it out. We have all of the trainings. I do a free intro. It's a 1-hour intro workshop. Every month, there's one offered for free online, as well as deeper dives, a 3-hour. Right now, we're in the middle of our spring deepest deep dive. I guess I should come up with some better words, better titles for these, but it's 15 to 18 hours of content where we go deep into the neurobehavioral model, deep into understanding the effects that prenatal exposure has on the brain, and then how to provide accommodations to individuals who were prenatally exposed. It's our biggest one of the year. It's 6 3-hour sessions, and I offer that in the spring as well as in the fall. So there's so many different options for you to choose from, and you can find them all on our website. But we want to make sure that you are equipped for this parenting journey, because whether you know you have a kiddo with an FASD or not, whether or not you even are told they have been prenatally exposed, you sooner or later will, or you're very likely you are. I had my son's special education teacher try to tell me that he was the first child that she'd ever had in her classroom with an FASD. And it's like, yeah, no, I don't think so. But regardless, the neurobehavioral approach, that brain-based approach, is what you need, no matter what is the reason for the behaviors that you're seeing. Those behaviors are symptoms of a brain that works differently, and we can help you and equip you to be able to support them and to just bring them along, right? And lead them to success. So we want to make sure that we do that. Check it all out. Go to justicefororphansny.org, and you'll find it all there. I also blog at sandraflach.com. So you can find my blog there. And I've been pointing you to so many different places, right? There's the adoption and foster care journey. There's Justice for Orphans. There's Sandra Flach. Well, we are working on making that so much easier for you. Very soon, if you were to go to Justice for Orphans website, the adoption and foster care journey would pop up, and everything that I talk about right now, between the podcast, the training, the support group, the coaching, all of it will be in one place for you to find. So much easier, including my blog. So we want to make sure that you'll be able to find all of that. But in the meantime, while we're trying to simplify it, whatever you type in the search or follow the links in the show notes, you'll be able to access the excellent resources that we provide for you, because we want to support you on your parenting journey. And Also, they always want me to remind you that if you like to watch your podcast, you can check us out. This whole podcast, you can watch the video version of it on our YouTube channel, the Justice for Orphans YouTube channel. You can go there and find the video version of all of our podcasts. And also, if you listen on Apple, please leave a review, give us a rating, leave a review. It helps other families who are searching for help and support when it comes to adoption and foster care to find this podcast. Tell all of your fostering and adopting friends about it as well. And of course, find us on social media. We're on Facebook at the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, and we're on Instagram as AFC_journey. Find us there, because I'm looking forward to connecting with you, and I'm grateful that you joined us today. I'm thrilled to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans, and check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.